Thanks for staying with us. Now, Kishore, let's on our last segment. One of the most important aspects of Indonesia being able to open its market to the world is the talent pool, the human resources development.
Yes.
And perhaps true, there's many unskilled labor in Indonesia, but it feels like there's not enough skilled labor in Indonesia. And how do we address this issue? Education plays a very important part, no doubt about that. So what focus the government should be giving on in terms of developing its talent pool?
Well, you know, earlier I mentioned that the great advantage of going for development now is that you can learn from other countries. And fortunately, several other countries have actually done a very good job of developing what are called vocational institutes to provide skilled labor. The reason why Japan and Germany emerged as industrial powers is because they invested in vocational institutes, and even India has been doing some of them. So actually within Southeast Asia, Singapore has got probably the best vocational institutes in the form of polytechnics and institutes of technical education. So that's something that Indonesia can try to replicate. It's quite easy to do these things. But more than that, you know, you mentioned the telephone. What is actually amazing about Indonesia is how the population has become connected with the cell phones. You know, I was in Mexico 6 months ago, and on my flight was a very young, bright venture capitalist who succeeded in Silicon Valley and who's only 22 years old. So when I asked him, you know, he's 22 years old, he's in Silicon Valley, he's successful, I said, which country are you going to invest in the next 10 years? He said, Indonesia. And I said, why? Why Indonesia? He said, because that country is emerging as one of the most connected countries in the world with a smartphone. And so therefore, since Indonesia is a geographically dispersed country and everyone is on the phone, the level of connectivity is going to grow dramatically. So this new connectivity within Indonesia provides a tremendous amount of economic opportunities that Indonesians can tap on.
So more and more people in Indonesia are connected, and it's also in line with Jokowi's one of Jokowi's vision of increasing the digital connectivity. Fiber cable is spread out through the country.
And that actually not all populations, by the way, react as enthusiastically as Indonesia has to these smartphones. And I think that a connected population of 250 million, it creates a wonderful economic opportunities for everyone.
Now, all eyes are right now on President Jokowi. I'd like to go back a little bit on his economic policy that he has released on a package of policy in order to boost the infrastructure project. It seems that he's using these momentums, his visits, his attendance in APEC, his visits to China and Japan, to just invite more and more people to invest. It seems like what we're doing right now is, simply put, is just put your money, bank your money in Indonesia. And do you think this is the right move for Jokowi at the moment, or will this backfire to him?
I think it's definitely the right move. And the good news is that both China and Japan want to invest in Indonesian infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you know, it's good that Indonesia has joined the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank initiative launched by China. Because when you build infrastructure, it leads to all kinds of economic benefits. For example, if you build competitive ports, for example, then Indonesia can export more. And so a modern infrastructure can help Indonesia. And in some ways, you know, that's also in some ways informally the way Singapore has been helping Indonesia, because the reason why Sumatra could develop a very large production of flowers was because they could use the efficient Changi airport to get the flowers to the Dutch market, which is the largest flower market, within 24 hours. But for the flowers in Sumatra to appear in the Dutch market 24 hours later, you had to have the Changi connection. So that's why infrastructure is very important. So even though the infrastructure is in Singapore, that infrastructure can actually help Indonesia develop.
Okay. In doing that though, shouldn't Indonesia or shouldn't Jokowi's administration also focuses on developing the people as well? It should go hand in hand so that this infrastructure development.
I think people development always comes first,
Yeah.
and you have the advantage here in Indonesia that you have very high standards of literacy. Now, what Singapore has learned is that you don't stop learning when you finish school. And so Singapore has started the concept of lifelong learning. And by the way, lifelong learning may seem like a job. Actually, learning is a source of joy. Learning is how you improve your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Learning is how you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
So I have engaged in lifelong learning myself.
Yeah.
And I believe that the young people should be told that the learning doesn't stop at school, it actually begins when you leave school. That's why I'm very glad that Pak Budi of Bank Mandiri said that his employees spend only 18 years in school but 30 years in Bank Mandiri. So Bank Mandiri gives them an equally important education, and that's a good example of lifelong learning.
Yeah. Thank you, Kishore. Thank you so much for sharing with us your thoughts on the future of Indonesia, and also thank you so much for a good session earlier today with Shoaib. And that was Kishore. That was a conversation with Kishore Mahbubani, the Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And right up next, we have a number of other discussions that will be taking place right here at the World Economic Forum in East Asia. At the moment, coming up next is actually, it may be ongoing at the moment, where co-chair John Riyadi, the Executive Director of Lipo Group Indonesia, are speaking at another televised session with the topic of injecting confidence into Asian markets. And coming up next, we have Blaise Hope, who will be talking to Matthew Driver from MasterCard right here from Shangri-La, Jakarta.